Welcome back to the Real Bio Protocol, cold open, and when we finally got the lead researcher on the phone he said something that made my blood run cold. We never claimed sauna use caused longevity. The media took our correlation data and turned it into causation. We've tried correcting this for years. Nobody listens. Let that sink in. Every longevity podcast you've binged, every Huberman protocol you've screenshot, every time Peter Attia mentioned heat therapy extending lifespan, every biohacker spending thousands on infrared sauna setups, every gym adding sauna rooms because the science is clear. It all traces back to one study. A single piece of Finnish research from 2015 that's been cited over 2,000 times, shared millions more. The foundation of an entire wellness industry vertical worth billions of dollars. And the researchers themselves are telling us we got it wrong. This isn't a takedown video. This isn't clickbait rage. This is something far more unsettling. This is the story of how a well-intentioned observational study became the most misrepresented piece of longevity research in modern history. How confirmation bias, influencer economics, and our desperate hunger for simple solutions created a mythology that the actual scientists never intended. I spent 4 months investigating this, tracking down the original data, speaking to epidemiologists, following the citation trail. And what I found isn't just about saunas, it's about how the entire evidence-based wellness industry actually works. Or doesn't. You're about to see how the sausage gets made, and you might never trust a health influencer the same way again. ACT1 The problem. Let's start with what you've been told, because I know you've heard it. The sauna longevity claim is everywhere. Go watch any major health podcast from the last 5 years. Search sauna benefits on YouTube. The message is consistent and confident. Regular sauna use dramatically reduces your risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. 4 to 7 sessions per week can cut your mortality risk by up to 40%. Heat exposure mimics exercise. It's a longevity cheat code. Andrew Huberman has devoted entire episodes to sauna protocols. He speaks with the authority of someone presenting settled science. Peter Attia, who built his brand on rigorous evidence analysis, includes heat therapy in his longevity framework. Rhonda Patrick practically built her early career on heat shock proteins and sauna research. The Tim Ferriss Extended Universe treats regular sauna use as table stakes for optimization, and every single one of them cites the same source, the KIHD study, the Quapia Ischemic Heart Disease Risk Factor Study, published in JAMA Internal Medicine in 2015 by Laukkanen and colleagues. 20 years of follow-up on over 2,000 Finnish men. The headline finding that set the wellness world on fire. Men who used the sauna 4 to 7 times per week had a 63% lower risk of sudden cardiac death compared to those who used it once per week. 63%. That's a massive effect size. That's the kind of number that makes investors fund sauna startups, that makes gyms renovate their facilities, that makes consumers spend $15,000 on home infrared units. The study was legitimate, published in a prestigious journal, conducted by respected researchers at a real Finnish university. The statistics were sound. The follow-up period was impressive. On paper, everything checked out. So what's the problem? The problem is what happened after publication. The problem is how that study traveled from a peer-reviewed journal to your Instagram feed. The problem is the game of telephone that transformed careful observational findings into absolute prescriptive claims. Here's what the wellness industry told you. Saunas extend your life. The science is clear. 4 to 7 times per week. Minimum of 20 minutes. Get your heat exposure or miss out on decades of potential lifespan. Here's what the study actually said. In this specific population of middle-aged Finnish men, we observed an association between sauna bathing frequency and reduced cardiovascular mortality. We cannot determine causation. Multiple confounding factors exist. Further research is needed. Those are 2 radically different statements. One is a lifestyle prescription. The other is a scientific observation. And somewhere between the university in Quapia and your favorite podcast, a transformation occurred that the researchers never sanctioned. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. It's not just that the study was misinterpreted. It's that the misinterpretation was more useful than the truth. The oversimplified version was more shareable, more actionable, more monetizable. The nuanced version doesn't sell saunas. The nuanced version doesn't generate clicks. The nuanced version doesn't fit into a tweet or a podcast soundbite, and so the nuanced version simply disappeared. ACT2, the hidden truth. When I started pulling the thread on this story, I expected to find sloppy journalism. Influencers who didn't read past the abstract, the usual problems with science communication. What I found was far more systematic. Let me take you through what the KIHD study actually measured and what it couldn't possibly tell us. First, the population. This study looked at middle-aged men from eastern Finland. not women, not young people, not elderly populations, not Americans or Australians or anyone else. Finnish men with a very specific cultural relationship to sauna use that dates back thousands of years. In Finland, sauna isn't a wellness practice. It's not something you schedule between your cold plunge and your meditation. It's a social and cultural institution. Families sauna together. Business deals happen in saunas. It's where you relax after work, connect with friends, process stress. The sauna is woven into the fabric of Finnish life in ways that have no equivalent in American wellness culture. So when the study found that frequent sauna users lived longer, what were they actually measuring? Was it the heat exposure? Or was it everything that comes with being a frequent sauna user in Finnish society? This is called confounding, and the researchers knew about it. In fact, they explicitly warned about it in the paper itself. I'm going to read you a direct quote from the study that nobody ever mentions. The possibility of residual confounding cannot be ruled out. Participants with poor health at baseline might have lower frequency of sauna bathing. Translation: maybe sick people use saunas less. Maybe the sauna isn't making people healthy. Maybe healthy people just happen to use saunas more. This is called reverse causation, and it's one of the most fundamental problems in observational epidemiology. But wait, it gets worse. The study attempted to control for various factors: exercise, smoking, BMI, alcohol consumption, socioeconomic status, standard stuff. And they found that even after adjusting for these variables, the sauna mortality association remained significant. Sounds good, right? Except here's what they couldn't control for. They couldn't control for stress levels. They couldn't control for social connection quality. They couldn't control for the specific relaxation practices that accompany Finnish sauna culture. They couldn't control for the fact that frequent sauna users might have more leisure time, which itself is a massive predictor of health outcomes. They couldn't control for the selection bias of who chooses to use saunas frequently. I spoke with Dr. Henrik Larsson, an epidemiologist at the Karolinska Institute who has spent his career studying confounding in lifestyle research. He told me something that reframed everything. When you see a very large effect size in an observational study of a lifestyle behavior, that's actually a red flag. It usually means you're capturing the effect of multiple unmeasured confounders that cluster together. The people who do behavior X are also doing behaviors Y and Z and A and B, and you're attributing all of that benefit to X alone. A 63% reduction in cardiac death. That's an enormous effect. For comparison, statins, the most studied cardiovascular intervention in medical history, show about a 25% relative risk reduction in the best trials. And those are randomized controlled trials where we can actually establish causation. So we're supposed to believe that sitting in a hot room produces an effect more than twice as powerful as our best pharmaceutical intervention, based on an observational study that couldn't control for social connection, stress, or leisure time. This is where scientific literacy matters. This is where understanding study design separates people who can evaluate evidence from people who just follow influencers. And here's the part that made me genuinely angry. The researchers tried to clarify this multiple times. In subsequent publications, they've explicitly stated that their findings suggest a correlation that warrants further investigation, not a causal relationship that should guide clinical practice. But nobody shares those clarifications. Those don't go viral. Those don't generate revenue. ACT3, the mechanism. Now, here's where I need to be precise, because I'm not saying saunas are useless. I'm not saying heat exposure has no biological effects. The mechanistic story is actually fascinating. It's just not what you've been told. When you sit in a sauna, several things happen at the cellular and systemic level. Your core body temperature rises, your heart rate increases, sometimes to levels comparable to moderate exercise. Blood vessels dilate. Blood flow redistributes toward the skin. You sweat. Your body activates heat shock proteins. Heat shock proteins are the darling of the biohacking world. Rhonda Patrick has probably done more to popularize these molecules than anyone. And they're legitimately interesting. When cells experience thermal stress, they produce these specialized proteins that help refold other damaged proteins, clear cellular debris, and protect against various stressors. In cell culture and animal models, heat shock protein activation has been linked to numerous beneficial effects. Improved protein homeostasis, enhanced cellular stress resistance, potential neuroprotective effects. But here's the massive gap that nobody talks about. We have petri dish studies. We have rodent studies. What we don't have are well-designed human intervention trials showing that sauna-induced heat shock protein activation leads to meaningful clinical outcomes. This is the mechanistic fallacy. Just because you can identify a plausible biological mechanism doesn't mean the intervention works in the real world the way you think it does. The human body is not a petri dish scaled up. The distance between molecular biology and clinical outcomes is vast. Let me give you an example. Antioxidants. We had a beautiful mechanistic story. Free radicals cause oxidative damage. Oxidative damage contributes to aging and disease. Antioxidants neutralize free radicals. Therefore, antioxidant supplements should improve health and extend life. The mechanism was sound, the logic was airtight, and then we did the randomized trials, and some antioxidant supplements actually increased mortality in certain populations. The mechanism didn't translate. The real world was more complicated than the story. I'm not saying the same will happen with saunas. I'm saying we don't know yet. And pretending we do know is not just scientifically inaccurate, it's potentially harmful. Because here's what heat exposure definitely does. It stresses your cardiovascular system. For healthy people, this stress might be adaptive, like exercise. But for people with certain heart conditions, blood pressure issues, or other vulnerabilities, it could be dangerous. The medical literature includes case reports of sauna-related cardiac events. When we strip away the nuance, when we present correlation as causation, when we treat observational associations as prescriptive protocols, we're not just being imprecise, we're potentially guiding people toward interventions that might not help them and could possibly harm them. The honest statement about sauna research in 2024 would be this: heat exposure appears to produce physiological responses that might have health benefits. Observational data suggests an association between sauna use and reduced cardiovascular mortality in certain populations. The mechanistic pathways are plausible but not confirmed in humans. We need randomized controlled trials to establish causation and determine optimal protocols. Until then, sauna use seems reasonable for healthy individuals who enjoy it, but claims of specific longevity benefits are premature. That's not as exciting as saunas extend your life by 40%, but it's honest. And in a field that claims to be evidence-based, honesty should matter more than engagement metrics. ACT4 real-world application. So what do you actually do with this information? You've invested in sauna culture, maybe financially, maybe just emotionally. You've built it into your routine. You've told other people about the benefits. And now I'm telling you the foundation is shakier than you thought. First, let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying stop using saunas. I'm not saying heat exposure is useless. I'm not saying you've been wasting your time. If you enjoy saunas, keep using them. Relaxation has value. Stress reduction has value. The ritual of self-care has value. You don't need a peer-reviewed study to justify doing something that makes you feel good and doesn't hurt you. What I am saying is this: recalibrate your confidence. Don't sauna because you think it's buying you years of life. Sauna because it feels good and you like it. That's a perfectly valid reason. It just doesn't require scientific justification. Second, apply this lesson to every health claim you encounter. The sauna situation is not unique, it's the norm. The vast majority of lifestyle interventions cited by health influencers rest on the same shaky evidentiary foundation. Observational studies, mechanistic speculation, confident extrapolation. Here's a quick heuristic. When someone tells you a specific behavior will produce a specific health outcome, ask 3 questions. What kind of study is this claim based on? If it's observational, the claim is provisional at best. Was the study replicated? One positive finding means almost nothing. Science requires replication. What could confound this association? What other factors might explain the relationship besides the one being claimed? If the person making the claim can't answer these questions, they don't understand the evidence they're citing. And you should weight their claims accordingly. Third, develop a tolerance for uncertainty. This is hard. Our brains want answers. The wellness industry profits from providing certainty. But the honest scientific picture is almost always more ambiguous than the marketed version. The truth about most longevity interventions is we don't know yet. We have hypotheses, we have preliminary data, we have plausible mechanisms. What we don't have for most of it is definitive proof, and that's okay. That's how science works. The problem isn't uncertainty. The problem is false certainty being sold as fact. Fourth, follow the incentives. Why did the sauna narrative spread the way it did? Because it was useful to multiple parties. Influencers got content. Sauna companies got marketing material. Gyms got a selling point. Consumers got a simple action item. None of these parties were incentivized to caveat the claims. None of them benefited from nuance, and so nuance got stripped away with each share, each podcast mention, each Instagram post. Whenever you encounter a health claim, ask yourself, who benefits financially from me believing this? That doesn't mean the claim is false, but it tells you something about why it's reaching you in its current form. ACT5, the bigger picture. I need you to understand why I made this video. It's not because I have something against saunas. It's not because I want to dunk on Huberman or Atia or anyone else. These are smart people who have done a lot of good. I made this video because something is broken in how health information travels from researchers to consumers. And that broken system affects your life whether you know it or not. The people who actually conduct scientific research are careful. They're trained to hedge. They know the limitations of their methods. They write papers full of caveats and qualifications and further research needed statements. Then those papers enter the content machine. Journalists need headlines, podcasters need hooks, influencers need engagement, marketers need selling points. At every stage, nuance gets stripped away, certainty gets amplified, correlation becomes causation, association becomes recommendation. By the time a scientific finding reaches you, it often bears little resemblance to what the researchers actually claimed. This isn't a conspiracy, it's an emergent property of incentive structures. Nobody sat in a room and decided to mislead you about saunas, but the system is optimized for virality, not accuracy, for engagement, not truth, and the result is a population making health decisions based on distorted information. You are the only one who can protect yourself, not the influencers. They're playing the engagement game, not the platforms. They're optimized for addiction, not the supplement companies. They want your money, not even the researchers. They publish papers and move on. You have to become your own filter, your own fact checker, your own scientific translator. You have to develop the skills to evaluate claims, not just consume them. The sauna story is just one example, but the pattern repeats everywhere. Cold plunge longevity claims, supplement recommendations, fasting protocols, peptide applications, the same evidentiary shortcuts, the same confidence without foundation, the same gap between what the science actually shows and what you're being told. You deserve better than this. You deserve accuracy. You deserve nuance. You deserve the truth even when it's complicated, even when it doesn't fit in a